Good evening, everyone. It's gives me great pleasure to welcome the District Governor of Rotary District 3240, Rotarian Dr. Kameshwar Singh Elangbam, who is an eminent orthopedic surgeon. Dr. Elangbam was born in Imphal. Now he is permanently settled in Shillong, and he studied in Assam as well as in different parts of the country. And he has further undertaken training and education in different parts of the world, including Germany and Switzerland. He joined the Rotary in 2007 with the Rotary Club of Shillong and has held many responsibilities in the club and the district. It gives me great pleasure to welcome Dr. Kameshwar Elangba.
Thank you.
Uh, could
Give it to
you
us.
address us with your opening words, please, Dr. Elangba?
Okay. Good evening, everybody, and especially Ritu Raz Pukan. I am thrilled to participate this particular Zoom meeting because the healthy climate and what we are facing as of today in the world, particularly in this part of the country in 3240, when the forest land has been encroached and there's a human habitation and continuous deforestation and creating awareness and trying to make sure that the people understand the importance uh, of forest and its vice versa importance of climate change. So I would simply say, I think more often such meetings are required, and we need to go forward about and aligning with the Rotary's areas of focus of environmental protection. Um, um, let's let's try to come out with many more similar meetings, and I'm really appreciating the effort made by the team and especially the Rotary Club of Rotary Club of Mango City, Malda, and Himachal Das, the assistant governor, his team, and all the proponents of this meeting. I'm really grateful to it. Thank you. Let's begin.
Thank you for those encouraging opening remarks, Dr. Elangbam. The Healthy Climate Initiative has been organizing several webinars as well as in-person seminars across the country. And our goal is to ensure that the climate conversation reaches every nook and corner, every educational institute, and the new uh, generation of climate activists are informed about the real threats as well as the possibilities that come with climate intervention. And that is what this webinar is all about today. And now it gives me great pleasure to welcome our moderator for today, Mr. Harv Simmons, who is the author of A Climate Vocabulary of the Future. And he's also the moderator of the Climate Emergency Forum and the co-founder of the Healthy Climate Action Coalition. Uh, Herb is based in the US, and the floor is all yours now.
Well, well, thank you. Can we silence?
We can mute all, and then you can tell, so everybody is so on. Harvey, you can unmute yourself.
Yeah. Okay. Well, thank you, Raj. The last time I saw you was in person, thousands of miles from where you are now, probably, and many thousands of miles from where I am in Baku, Azerbaijan, for COP29. And it's good to see you. And thank you so much to the Rotary Club for co-sponsoring this program, this very important program today. You're halfway around the world from where Mike and I are, and Soumitra, this just shows that in terms of addressing climate change, there are no borders. We all have to work together and share and learn from each other, and that's what we hope to do in our hour or a little more webinar today. So the title, if you looked at the title, it says, how do we restore a healthy climate, or that we can restore a healthy climate? You're probably scratching your head and wondering, how in the world can we do that when things are getting worse every day? And people only talk about how to keep them from getting a little less worse. Well, that's what we're going to be talking about, or at least just beginning to scratch the surface in what is, many of us feel, one of the most important conversations that can be had. And our speakers today, Mike MacCracken and Soumitra Das, are extraordinary in their knowledge and their backgrounds and their commitment to climate restoration and to making a healthy and safe climate for everybody. The format is going to be very simple. And I have Mike speak for about 10 minutes, then Soumitra will open up for some questions and discussion between the two of them. And then the floor will be yours for the rest of the program. But before I introduce them and we get to that, we have maybe a little extra special a quiz. We're going to put you to work a little bit, not much work, just a tiny little bit. In a moment, we're going to put on the screen some questions to find out a little bit about your backgrounds, where you are, whether in India or US or elsewhere, and also very importantly, whether you have any firm convictions or beliefs about the desirability of climate restoration, of solar radiation management, of some of the things we're going to talk about. So the webinar poll is up there in front of you right now. So we'll give you, I don't know, 30 seconds or so to answer those questions. Don't worry about it. You know, if you don't fall exactly into one of those categories, it's not about being scientific. It's just getting a sense of who you are and what your beliefs about cooling are. So let me give you a few more seconds. I'll leave it up to Soumitra to decide when to take down the poll and show the results, because you're monitoring people's responses.
Yeah, I strongly encourage you to take the poll. It'll get us some, understanding about your background understanding and understanding of some of the things that we'll be talking about. So we'll take 30 seconds. I see the poll is continuing. Fifteen more seconds. So 15 out of 30 participated. So
we could do better than that. At least I hope in a few more seconds, give us your answers if you can.
So I see it's stuck in 16 out of 30. So I'm ending the poll and I'll share the results. And Harvey can take it over from there.
Okay. All right. So it looks like most everyone is from India. At least I don't know that I can see all the results here in my screen. Oh, here we go. So we've got a pretty broad view perspective in terms of background. Students, NGOs, private sector, public sector, retired, all kinds of things. A little less than half of you are aware of solar radiation management, and it looks like 40% are strongly supportive, 20 somewhat, 27 neutral, 13 unsupportive, and 0 strongly unsupportive. So we'll go back to this in an hour or so and see whether that's changed or not. So that gives us a little snapshot of who you are and what we believe, and from now we'll take it the program to our two speakers. So thank you for filling out that program. So I'm first going to introduce Mike MacCracken, who I've gotten to know and work with the last few years here in the Washington, D.C. area. He's been volunteering as the chief scientist for the climate change programs with the Climate Institute since his retirement in 2002. He's a graduate of Princeton University and the University of California, Davis. He devoted a lot of his career to leading climate change modeling studies at the Lawrence Livermore National Laboratory in Livermore, California, one of the preeminent scientific institutions in the world. He then, for 9 years, was chief scientist with the Interagency Office of the U.S. Global Change Research Program, then became the first executive director of the Coordination Office for the U.S. National Climate Impacts Assessment. He's also been the president of the International Association of Meteorology and Atmospheric Sciences, and currently, along with me, serves on the board of the Healthy Planet Action Coalition. So Mike's going to speak for about 10 minutes. And so the floor is yours. Welcome.
Well, hi, thank you, Herb. So I've been asked to sort of provide an overview of where we are and to sort of give a sense of what the options are for trying to come up with a credible plan. So the first thing to recognize is how far back this whole issue goes. I mean, there was recognition that CO2 would absorb infrared radiation way back in the mid 19th century. By the end of the century, they'd done calculations that showed that by changing the concentration, you could lead to atmospheric warming. There were a number of scientific doubts about that the first half of the 20th century, but by the mid 20th century, there was enough information recognized that the President's Science Advisory Council, so back when President Johnson was a president 60 years ago, came to offered the following comments. Through his worldwide industrial civilization, man is unwittingly conducting a vast geophysical experiment. By the year 2000, this may be sufficient to produce measurable and perhaps marked changes in climate. So that was understood in 1965. They also realized that there were going to have to be ways of dealing with it and suggested that the possibilities of deliberately bringing about countervailing climatic changes therefore need to be thoroughly explored. So here we are talking about something now 60 years later. In those 60 years since then, there's been sort of considerable progress. In the 1970s, the World Climate Research Program was established, and a lot of nations got their research program going. And by 1985, there was a sort of meeting in Villach, Austria, that was convened by the World Meteorological Organization and then the International Council of Scientific Unions. And it basically it involved people from both the developed and developing world. And the conclusion was the climate of the future is going to be different than the past. The reaction in the developing world at the time which was facing drought and other things that we hope to get to the 50 years into the future. And so they sort of encouraged the developed nations to take action. That led to the creation of the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, which started putting out its assessments in 1990, and by 1995 was saying we've detected a discernible human influence on the global climate. So that was recognized. The negotiations then really also got started. Kyoto Protocol was proposed in the late 1990s, then in the 16 years ago, around 2009, the Copenhagen Accord, and then 10 years ago, the Paris Accord. And you think, gee, they've done a lot, but where are we? Well, global emissions of greenhouse gases are still going up. We're at least several decades, if not longer, from net zero. The global average temperature is increased by 1.5 degrees C. And we're sort of on a path that may double, which will even further trigger intense heat waves, higher heat indices, that can make outdoor living in many places unlivable. warming leads to more moisture in the atmosphere, so we're having more precipitation, and there's sort of a, at least in the United States, but I believe everywhere, sort of a century-long change that a greater fraction of the precipitation is coming in drenching, flood-inducing rains. Sea level rise is accelerating as there starts to be ocean warming that expands the ocean and works on melting the ice sheets and the glaciers. So what are the options for doing it, and where are we on these? Well, there have been a couple of successes. One has been that cutting emissions of CFCs and halocarbons, which has been done under the Montreal Protocol to limit ozone depletion, has actually been very helpful. All of those substances are strong greenhouse gases, and we'd be in even worse shape if that hadn't happened. So international actions can have an effect. The price of alternative energy, so solar and wind and other renewable forms, is coming way down. It's becoming the preferred energy source, or the least expensive in many different locations. The problem is that its growth is only sort of taking care of the growth in energy use. And so fossil fuels have remained still 70 to 80% of global energy supplies. And if we want to stop climate change, we got to get that to zero, which has not been done before for previous energy sources. So it's going to be quite a challenge. There is a potential that aggressive mitigation of methane and air pollution and black carbon can be helpful. That does also, though, lead to reduction in sulfur dioxide, which becomes aerosols and have been sort of a white haze that have helped with cooling. You can try, and techniques are being developed to pull CO2 out of the atmosphere. That turns out generally to be pretty expensive if humans take that on completely by themselves. On the other hand, if you let nature do it, if you can arrange for nature to do it, so you either do it on land by taking up waste biomass from lumbering, for example, or you take up, you grow ocean farm and grow algae or something. You can create it into biochar, which helps enrich soils, for example, and that can pull CO2 down. But the practical limits of that are probably right now only about 10% of what the present global emissions are. We have to get emissions down. Then there's what's suggested as adaptation, and try and deal with the effects, build our resilience. And in this category, I'd put the potential for local to regional geoengineering or climate intervention, trying to figure out the worst impacts and try and do something specific about it. So Australia is trying to brighten clouds over the Great Barrier Reef to try and reduce water temperatures. And there are a range of other possible approaches. I see Leslie Field is listening in, and she has approaches for trying to brighten the ice and try and keep glacial ice and other ice from melting in the summer. But international negotiations end up being focused almost entirely on reducing CO2 emissions, mainly from fossil fuels, but also due to deforestation. And what's happening is this is proving extremely difficult for countries to do. It's a difficult challenge. It's not easy to do. It requires some funding up front and some changes. And there is a lot of inertia in the system. And the frustrating thing about mitigation is all it really does, and it's important to do, is limit further warming. It doesn't really take us back to where we've been. It doesn't sort of offset warming we've had and try and go back further. And so there are a number of areas, India, parts of India perhaps being one of them, some other areas in low latitudes where we're getting closer and closer to what can really call a dangerous interference with the climate system, which was what the UN Framework Convention was set about in the 1990s to try and deal with. So the only long-term, near-term way to try and pull back global warming is to try and intervene in what's often called solar radiation management, to try and reflect away some of the incoming solar radiation so not as much energy is getting trapped. And what has been recognized in people looking at it, and is some research going on about it, not enough, but a lot, that one could start it in the polar regions in the relatively near term because the troposphere is lower. You have aircraft that could get it up there. You only have to offset the equivalent of a doubling of CO2, and we're only about halfway there. But CO2 doubling, you really only need to reflect back to space about 1% of the incoming solar radiation. It would be something that is hardly noticeable. People would not detect. You have much more variation caused by just cloudy days and everything like that. So it is something that has been proposed. I think the rationale for it is not just cooling, but what's turning out to happen is that the Sustainable Development Goals that the United Nations has tried to set up so that everybody in the world can have a sort of equitable chance at a good life are becoming more and more unreachable as warming gets bigger. And if that really happens, and there's no plausible way of reaching it in the reaching these goals, then some of the low latitude areas are going to become virtually unlivable. In the United States, I sort of asked some of my friends, how would you like to live in Texas without air conditioning? Right now, the decision making and much of the discussion about it is going on in the developed world where people have air conditioning to try and deal with health. That isn't true for lots of people in the world, probably for a few billion people in the world. And it's going to be arguably much harder to phase up air conditioning to help everybody than it would be to implement climate intervention. Now, it isn't getting discussed as it should. That's for a few reasons, and I'll just, including comment on a couple of them. People say uncertainties about doing it are large. Well, there are uncertainties, but it's in a realm of where we've been dealing with the atmosphere before. And there are very large uncertainties about what's going to happen in the world if we don't do it. So one really has to do a relative risk analysis on doing it. There's a concern that it'll lead to people pursuing mitigation much less intensely. It'll worsen the climate that way. But we're already on a path to solar and wind energy. It's hard to see how people are going to go back to coal, which at least in the United States costs several times as much as solar, and the economics are just going to drive us toward things. So, is it more, or should you worry about reducing the pressure for mitigation, or should you worry about all the people who are going to suffer if we don't get the climate under control? What are the ethical aspects of that? There's discussion that international governance is missing, but if you focus the issue about doing it on maintaining the plausibility of the Sustainable Development Goals, the United Nations has an organizational framework for trying to pursue the Sustainable Development Goals. In fact, if you go back, it's almost 15 or 20 years now, they asked the scientists on an international panel what they should be doing. Scientists don't like to say what you should do, but we will say if you want to get to where you want to be, you're going to have to be considering climate intervention. Finally, there's this issue of, well, what if somebody stops? And it's called sort of termination shock. Well, termination shock will only be bad and make things worse if reducing emissions isn't working, if reducing emissions of short-lived species can't be done, if CO2 can't be pulled out of the atmosphere, and if adaptation doesn't work. If all of those fail, we're in big trouble anyway. So it really is, that seems just not an argument for me. So the question the Healthy Planet Action Coalition has been asking about solar radiation management is, if not now, when? When should we start it? How much worse are we going to let it before we go? And sort of also, if not now, why? What is the reason we would not do this? So that's what we can have a discussion about. And I'll turn it back to her to introduce Soumitra.
Oh, thank you so much, Mike. That was remarkable. In 11 or so minutes, you've really given the background and the issues and the rationale for the world essentially turning its attention urgently to figuring out the questions that Mike ended his talk right now. If not now, when and how, and what happens if we don't do this? And that's a perfect segue to my introduction to the person that you all know, Soumitra Das, who is the founder, the originator, the initiator of the HCI, Healthy Climate Initiative. He's executive director. He's an engineer. He's a strategist. He's held senior leadership positions across the U.S. government, Fortune 500 companies, and global telecom standards bodies. He currently manages a multi-billion-dollar federal program, including a major research lab. He's a climate reality leader trained by Al Gore, and he leads global campaigns, Himalayan field trials with Leslie, who's here. Hello, Leslie, and policy advocacy to accelerate urgent science-based climate solutions. Soumitra's guiding philosophy is, you found it. He holds degrees from George Mason University and the Wharton School at the University of Pennsylvania, where I also attended. Thank you for organizing this, Soumitra. Thank you for all your work in creating HCI and bringing people together. And the floor is yours.
Thank you, Herb, for your kind introduction. Thank you, everyone, for participation from all over the world, particularly India, where I'm planning to go back next year to do the climate work. So let me share a few slides. I have only 10 minutes to talk about India's situation in India. And so I'll pass pretty quickly. Can you see all my slides?
Yes.
So India, it is extremely vulnerable to climate change. And there are certain big picture, if you look into from the big picture side, it's a highly dense populated country. 1.4 billion, the highest population in a smaller country, smaller than China, 1/3 of the US size. Particular problem is that, you have coastal 250 million people live in the coastal side. So as the sea level rises, they are vulnerable to getting drowned. Then you have, on the top, you have the Himalayan glaciers and all the rivers that originate from the Himalayan glaciers. So when it gets melted faster, rapidly, you see the problem and the down, a lot of flooding. At the same time, water crisis as it retreats up. Agriculture depends on monsoon. If monsoon changes, that affects your agricultural yields. And I will go all of them in detail very quickly, but our infrastructure is also very weak to manage this climate change impacts. Heat waves, we are very familiar with heat waves. It's happening, it's increasing with frequency and intensity. We feel it. My friend Raj in Assam was telling me that he was having a few weeks ago that 7 degrees Celsius and 96% humidity. And that means it's about, and he did not have, he had power cuts during that time. So think about the situation that 35 degrees Celsius wet bulb temperature is the survivability limit. Meaning if the wet bulb temperature, 100% humidity and 35 degrees Celsius, you cannot live more than 6 hours. And that is, even if you're living in shade or anything, because your body will not be able to function. And Raj was telling me 37 degrees Celsius and 96% humidity. If you take that into consideration, that means about 33 or 32 degrees Celsius wet bulb temperature, very close to the human survivability limit. Now, on top of that, most of the homes do not have air conditioning. Now, our Raj is lucky to have this in his home, but most of the people don't. And look at the productivity. There's some people working in the field, construction, and the 70% of people work in the physical labors. what will happen to the productivity, what will happen to those people health-wise. Okay. I'm just giving you some data point, 49 degree Celsius, last year 120 degree in Delhi. This year it went up to 48 degrees Celsius. So this is something I mentioned, that we have a limit. We cannot go on, keep on adapting. There is a survivability limit is there. So that is the heat wave part. Then we are getting extreme rain because of, as the temperature increases, then you get the moisture up in the air, and warmer. So warmer air holds more water vapor. And there is a 1%, so 1 degree Celsius increase holds 7% more water vapor, right? So what happens? That if the conditions are right, you get bigger downpour. And we are hearing a lot of this word, cloudburst, then rain bombs, atmospheric rivers, all those things we are hearing. We did not hear this in the past. This rain bombs, sudden downpour that we see today is because of this climate change and the warmer temperature that is happening. And because of that, what we see is that infrastructure, for example, suddenly you see huge rain and the city gets flooded, the floods flooded, and infrastructure is not able to cope up with it. We did not see that when I was growing up, this kind of rain bombs. So that is the extreme rain that we are getting, and the flash floods situation. On the other side, you are seeing that on the north you have the Himalayan glaciers. They're rapidly melting. So as it rapidly melts, you get the flooding situation in the bottom down south. But on the top, excuse me, sorry about that. So on the top, as the glacier retreats, there is a water crisis on the top. So if you type ghost villages in Google, you'll find in the north, a lot of villages are sorry, somebody's trying to reach me badly, but anyway, let us continue. So the water crisis is another problem that is happening. And because of the water crisis in the north, we are going to see a lot of migration from the mountain. And that's what we see. And the third part is called is the GLOF, that glacial lake outburst flood. That as the glacier retreats, a lot of lakes are getting formed, and those lakes are not stable. They're unstable. They are contained in the situation with the unstable moraine. So that flood can wash away certain area of the Himalayan villages, and we have seen that in the past. And I do not know the recent situation, how that works out. But in Pakistan, because of the rain bombs and this glacial lake outburst together created a situation where about 33 million people became refugees that time. And it's a huge hit on the agriculture and the general, livable condition, economic impact that happened due to that. So if you look at because of this combination, if you look into the situation that because of sea level rise, what is our cities, the impact on our cities. So this is what we get: Kolkata, Mumbai, Dhaka, These are the top 10 cities, the risk of sea level rise. And I think to 2070 is too far out. I think there is 2050. Now the consideration is 2050 that many parts of Mumbai, Kolkata, Dhaka could be underwater. Think about the situation of what could happen if that some parts of Kolkata or many parts of Kolkata go underwater. Where the people would go. The migration part, the refugees that can ensue. So we need to think about this situation. Rainfall is increasing rapidly. I mentioned that even in Malda, in my own hometown, I see in 1980, we used to have rainfall less than half than we have today. And not only the rainfall is, I think one other problem what we are seeing is that rainfall is happening at one time, huge amount of rainfall, and there is no rainfall for some time, and then again, huge amount of rainfall. The challenge is that if that kind of rainfall, extreme rainfall happens, we have the problem with flash floods, also the problem with the agriculture at the same time. In the past, when I was growing up, we would see the monsoon will happen. We'll have a throughout monsoon, but from June, we'll have rain throughout this monsoon season, but not too much at one time, but throughout the time. And there's a controlled part rain that we used to see. So this is a very scary part with all those things happening that can lead to a situation of unlivable zones in the world. And look in India today, you see the current condition, the black part, you see that these are the unlivable zones. Too hot to live in this area. But think about 2070, what will happen to India. A lot of parts of India could be unlivable because of. So what do we have to do? Do we have to do something? I often say that we are acting like a proverbial frogs in the boiling water. That's something, something to think about. But what we can do, and one thing for sure, and Mike mentioned that, we need to do decarbonize. We need to go from fossil fuel to renewables. We need to do the forestation. We have to stop the deforestation. All this thing, but is this sufficient? Do we have the time? And it looks like that we do not have that time. It would take many decades that to decarbonize. And what will happen during that time? So that's why we are calling for rapid decarbonization. This is the permanent solution that we understand that we have to do. But at the same time, deploy surface albedo modification techniques to protect people from extreme heat. There are many techniques, and Leslie is one of them, promoting for the Himalayan glacier solution, that how we can reduce the melting of Himalayan glaciers by increasing surface albedo modification. At the same time, we are promoting that accelerate research and readiness for large-scale solar radiation management, that we got to be ready, because at some point, we may have to, I hope we don't, but we may have to do that. And it takes many years to get ready for that. We don't want in a situation that there are mass casualty happening on the street because the temperature exceeds more than 35 degrees Celsius wet bulb temperature, and that leads to mass casualty. We don't want that. And if that happens, some country will do unprepared something that's not going to be good for the rest of the world. So we need to think about that and how we can do that. And we need to push the government to do this, deploy local SRM and accelerate research for large-scale solar radiation management. So these are the things we do. I don't know, don't have much time. A lot of things we do from HCI. We do awareness campaign. We are trying to host or conference next year to bring the political sides, meaning parliamentarians, civil societies, academicians, all of them in one place to deliberate and find an action to protect us in the not too far in the future. So this is something that I wanted to show. Leslie is here. We were last year in October doing a trial in the Himalayan glacier, Chota Shigri. And that's what I wanted to show you. This is our plot, and this is how you increase the reflectivity or increase the surface albedo of the glacier. And our result was great. We reduced the melting by over 50%, in fact, 58%, but the data is it's a limited data. We have to do more research, but we do not have the funding at this point, and hoping that we get funding to do the phase 2 of our research. And that ends my, prepared talk.
Well, thank you, Soumitra. A very modest talk. You basically outlined the situation that India is in, what some of the potential remedies are, and what HCI very briefly hopes to do to achieve them. So you have this modest goal of cooling a country of 1.3, or maybe it's 1.4 now, billion people, in time to minimize and avoid as much as possible the kinds of calamities and catastrophes that India and other places are experiencing now. You just sent a couple days ago a video that was horrifying to me of basically a flood coming down in the mountains, washing away one of the villages. And unfortunately, that kind of image and that kind of reality will become all too common in the future. So before we go to audience questions, there's a lot, I'm sure, particularly those of you who are maybe hearing many of these things for the first time, because this is really stuff that almost is never talked about in climate discourse. I mean, that's one of the most amazing things that after all these years I've been involved in is that, the talking about cooling, talking about solar radiation management, talking about restoration of a safe climate as opposed to simply making things a little less bad, is largely not on the radar of international climate negotiators in most countries and most people. So if I were to ask you, Soumitra, to what is one message in just a kind of an elevator pitch in a couple of sentences that you want folks who are here today, who are hearing much of this for the first time, to walk away from or with?
So situation is very bad. We are going to, particularly India and South Asia and the lower latitude countries, we have to take serious action. We have to take so that we can protect our vulnerable people from this extreme heat situation. So that would be, there are methods to do that. Some of them are proven, some of them they are not proven, but because it is not unproven, that we should not stay away from it. We should take the challenge to save the humanity, but particularly those in the global south who really did not cause this problem.
Well, that's right, and that's one of the real tragedies, that the people who caused the problem are doing not nearly enough to solve the problem, and it's probably the largest inequity in human history. So, Mike, let me ask you the same question I asked Soumitra. Based upon your many years of experience and knowledge and engagement in the climate world and every aspect of it and what you've said today, what's the one message that you would like people to walk away from as they go have their suppers tonight? I know it's evening in India, or whatever. Take a walk to cool off after listening to this. What would you like people to take away?
Well, I think what I would say is that we've had now 30 some odd years, a third of a century, sort of having the issue posed as dealing with dangerous anthropogenic climate change without really having a definition of what that means. And it seems to me that instead of focusing it on the increase in global average temperature, which is the way IPCC does it, is averaged over 10 or 20 years and is averaged over the oceans and the lands. And the warming over the land is about double what it is over the ocean. I mean, it's about the most innocuous metric that you can use. And if you were to use more severe metrics, you would see how severe it is. And it seems to me a way to hopefully push the issue ahead is to make it much more practical for people by saying it's going to make the sustainable development goals and all that the international community is wanting to do to help people of the world, it's going to make that not achievable. Soumitra's diagram of uninhabitable zones, for example, was one. And what's going to happen is people have to move and relocate if they can, and it's just going to sort of have the effect of tearing countries apart, and I think that's unfortunate. So I think reframing it around trying to keep the sustainable development goals as plausible as what I would urge. I want to, if I can, to just augment one comment Soumitra made. Soumitra basically said that, which is how it is discussed by climate modelers like me, that if you raise the temperature 1 degree, you raise the amount of water vapor by 7%. Yeah, but when storms occur and air is coming in with that 7% more moisture, then when that moisture condenses, it releases 7% more energy. And that causes greater lifting of the air and pulls in air from around. And so when you start adding together the various feedbacks, each degree is more like sort of a 20% or so kind of increase in the effect of what's happening. So this issue of atmospheric rivers and coming up against mountains and ranges is happening now everywhere in the world. I mean, it's certainly happening in the US. It's happening in India. It happened in Pakistan. I mean, it's going to happen everywhere. The oceans determine the temperature, the moisture that gets evaporated pretty much. And as they get warmer and they're taking up 90 some odd percent of the increase in the trapped energy, I mean, the air doesn't have much heat capacity, so it's mostly in the oceans, and they're putting more and more moisture in the atmosphere. That's going to be just a tremendous impact in everybody who lives, near hills and mountains where water can come in, and as air goes up, it just dumps it all, and the soils are already saturated, so all the increase essentially goes into runoff, and that can just cause horrendous impacts.
Thank you, Mike.
Yes, that's a lot to take in. Thanks, Mike. Let me turn it back to Soumitra, and I'm also going to put you or try to put you on the spot. You're usually pretty good at getting away with when I try to put you on the spot, but I'm going to try again. And also, I see he's smiling. I'm going to put Raj on the spot. So basically, my question to the two of you, I've asked you generally, what's the takeaway you want people to go home with, or go into the living room from whatever room you're in now watching this, and that is as specifically as you can. And we have the Rotary clubs here today. We're up to 46 people in attendance, which is spectacular. Clearly, that shows a commitment and an interest by your organizations in learning more about this and doing something about this. So, what can the folks in the Rotary Club and other people watching this, what specifically can they do tomorrow? Is there something, for example, you want your local government to do in Malta, and I don't know the geographies and so forth, or in West Bengal, or the overall government in India? What would be the demand? What would be the ask? What is it that is realistic and necessary in the context of, as both Mike and Soumitra have said, there's a term that I use, I didn't come up with it, and that is that we have this, because of the physics of climate change and the chemistry of it, we have what could be called an enormous procrastination penalty. That every day that we wait before we reduce emissions dramatically, before we take away from the atmosphere, remove as many as we can, before we directly cool the climate, it becomes harder and harder. We have what are called tipping points that may, sort of like the snowball going down the mountain, be very difficult to stop in the Amazon and in the Arctic and other places. So, given this sense of urgency and immediacy, I'm going to ask Raj and Soumitra, what do you want folks to do tomorrow morning when they wake up?
Raj, go ahead. That's a hard question.
Thank you. Thank you, Herb. I think it is a very, very relevant question, especially with a Rotary club. I used to be a Rotarian myself, and from the same district, 3240, and it includes the entire Eastern India, the Eastern Himalayas, which is one of the fastest warming places. And I would take your question in reference to the International Day for the World's Indigenous People yesterday, where I was a speaker at a central event with representatives from 8 different indigenous peoples organizations, as well as from 6 of the 8 states in the northeastern region. And the feedback we received from our all the indigenous peoples was that what they now are worried about is the inability to go out to the agricultural fields. Most of them are farmers and fishermen. They say that when they go to fish in the paddy fields, when there's waterlogging now because of the rains, there's no fish, and they say the flowering, and they can feel that trees are flowering later, and somehow they have the ability to connect that to the less number of insects, and all the interconnected collapse of the ecosystem that they are feeling, which is means the direct loss of certain foods which were very important for certain types of festivals and other cultural significant traditions. But with Rotary Club having branches in every small town and city, over 100 in the northeast and the eastern part of India, I think Rotary is so well placed to motivate the entire, the business and professional community. And we could tie up with Healthy Climate Initiative. We could take this to the towns, to the cities, and make sure that the local people who make a difference in everyday lives are sensitized, and they are able to do whatever little they can do to elevate the sufferings of the people who are, at the front lines, the indigenous people and local community. That's it from me. Thank you.
Well, that's very eloquently said and very promising. And of course, it's all up to you folks to how much you're going to, to think about this and act on this when you get up tomorrow morning. We've tried to give you some of the reasons today why urgent action is so literally life and death. I'll go take it back to Soumitra for any comment you'd like to give.
So, I know Raj eloquently said from tomorrow, what should be done? We can work together, HCI and Rotary Club, that 3240 district. Just think about the urgency we laid out. Hopefully, you understand the situation is really urgent. One thing you have to think that is not going to be solved tomorrow when you get up tomorrow, because the problem that we have done is last 200 years that we have created this problem and still continuing this. So not tomorrow getting up and that not, but what we can do together is that changing the mindset of people, or number one, to open up that besides wild forestation and stopping the deforestation are very important. That we have to go, if there is a deforestation, we need to raise our voice. Definitely we need to do that. But we also need to understand and tell people this is not enough. For example, Leslie and us going to save the Himalayan glaciers and running out of funding. Can you help us together? that we can go and help this situation. We are having difficulty to generate enough funding, not a whole lot, very little. We can work together and see how we can save the mountain, that glaciers, or at least get the attention that that problem is there and how we can solve this together. I'm not saying this is the only solution we have. This is one solution, but that it also gets the thing. And we do not know whether it can solve it or not, but we need to try. And Leslie has taken Leslie has been there in that, place. Okay, so that's one thing we can do. But again, that is not enough. It's such a huge problem. We have to involve the government in this policy making. And what we call that's a national cooling plan that we need to do in 5 years, that allocate enough resources, allocate research funding, deploy the local surface albedo enhancement that can protect people from the people who are going into the field, cannot go there because it's too hot or it is too water too high. How can you protect those people? And we need to have bigger entities like the government, national government. And that's what we are trying to do, called National Cooling Policy 2.0. And if you can join us to promote this and get the government attention to adopt this policy, that would go a long way for our survivability. Thank you.
Thank you again for those, as always, heartfelt and eloquent comments. I guess one of the things that I would say, and it's hardly original, and while it's, I think, particularly apt for India, but certainly for every country, is the absolute necessity to engage young people whose world, of course, they're going to inherit what we have created, and we can't be very proud of our creations in terms of our legacy in the next decade or two or three or four. And I think the message to young people that there are ways to literally cool things off, and not just prevent things from getting a lot hotter, a little more slowly. But that they'll only happen if young people raise their voice to their parents and their teachers and their professors and their employers and everybody and their governments, that to demand the kinds of research and field testing and different and new perspective that Soumitra, along with Leslie and Mike and Raj and all the folks here, are attempting in our own ways to get across. So it's not just we want to do some different things, but we want people to be realizing that there's a much more potentially hopeful and positive way to think about climate, but it's not going to happen as long as we continue on the path we're on now. So that's my sort of a little mini rant to you all. I want to see if there are any. I don't see any
Mike has a
specific questions. Before I go to Mike, though, I want to see are there any questions from you all? I don't see any specifically in the chat. You can raise your hand also.
Leslie has one, and I should perhaps take it on if you go there, which it was asking about.
All right. Well, before I go to Leslie, I just want to make sure that our local folks in India don't have any questions. Hopefully,
yes, I have. I have a question.
Yes, please.
Yes, I am. Yes. Thank you very much. It's a wonderful sort of a deliberation from Soumitra and also the team. I'm sensitized, absolutely sensitized when I heard the word climate emergency. And I saw the possible world map of today and 2070. The areas which is livable and which are not going to be livable. And one more thing about, you said, 35 degrees with 100% humidity, man cannot survive. All these things are real emergencies what we are facing as of today. And we also know that basically all these things as a result of CO2 emission plus deforestation. And also the word you have mentioned about the solar radiation management, one term which I am now knowing for the first time or hearing for the first time. Well, friends, I am the district governor of 3240. As Soumitra has rightly said, because this is a place where, if you happen to look at the entire map of India, that still remain green. But in another maybe about 5 years down the line, that will become green to yellow, yellow to red. It's going to be a really horrible situation. And when you said tomorrow what will happen, my job as a Rotarian, about 30 to 40, we have about 3,600 odd members and 101 clubs. Our impression or our first advocacy will be we must create awareness to the people. Once we make them aware and once we sensitize that, look, climate emergency is a real situation. You or me are not going to leave. Don't think about our second generation or third generation. So what we need to do is, as we Rotarians have been doing already, as a seventh area of focus is the climate, the area of environmental protection. So we are, as of today, we are doing all, I don't know, I don't need to elaborate, but coming to my area, that is 3240, which is a part of the entire Northeast India and part of West Bengal. My feeling is we must vigorously, come what may, we must create maximum awareness to all the population, especially targeting the young people. And once they are sensitized, by demand, they will not allow any fossil fuel emission or deforestation. And as of today, we are encouraging people must plant as many trees as possible. We will not allow the forest land to be engrossed, even after increasing pressure of human habitation, or come what may the development, which we have been talking about, sustainable developmental goals. So as a Rotarian, I would emphasize to all my colleagues who are here now and beyond that we must give most importance of creating awareness and advocacy so that climate emergency is a real situation, which we will not be, unless we do immediately something, will not be able to face what is going to come in the next few years. That's one aspect. We'll also try to do advocacy part in partnership with the government. All the government is already doing a lot of things in terms of maybe river connection, maybe creating more water bodies, maybe whenever you want to do a developmental project, a lot of environmental clearances, etc., etc. Beyond this, our job will be, yes, as I said about the awareness, plus also trying to be to influence the government that this is a very, very urgent. And we should not be very pessimistic as of today. Yes, time is still there. We must work hard to achieve what we intend to do. As a Rotarian, my concept is, or my only mission will be to make maximum awareness and sensitize the population so that they will demand. When a demand comes, nobody can stop. Even the population, even the government cannot stop. So this is what we want to create. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Alanram, for your, the work you have been doing and for your speech. And we have been engaged in doing this awareness campaign. We plan to go across the country, 12 universities every year to hold workshops, one-day workshops. And on top of that, we do host a lot of seminars, bi-weekly webinar. So if you could join hands together, that would even, increase the intensity and reach at the same time. So I welcome, your kind comments and also the opportunity to work with you together on this, because alone we cannot do these things. We need bigger and bigger collaboration to reach the population that we are looking for. Thank you.
Thank you.
I will be eager, and I think many of us will, to over in the next few months to see the partnerships that develop and the progress that's made in your part of India and the whole country. Are there any other questions, particularly from our Indian contingent, or comments that you'd like to make, or questions, or the things we said that you're shaking your head and not sure they make sense to you, or you want to challenge them or ask more about them? Okay, I don't see any others going once, twice. Then let me turn it over back to Mike.
I want to go back just a bit, Herb, to one of your questions about what people can do. One of the real challenges about this problem is that it is created by what's happening around the globe. So it's a global problem, and it's going to be a challenge to address it on that scale. But the impacts that are happening, which is what was asked about also in a question, are on a local scale. It matters very much what is happening locally. In the United States, when we did our first national climate assessment, we broke the country into 20 regions. Each region had different set of priorities. There was one common thing across all regions. It was what's happening with respect to water. In Alaska, they were worried about the temperature of water and how that was going to affect the fish, and how the rivers, when they ice over, are a means of transportation. But in Texas and the river basins in the other parts of the country, it was a very different issue. So water is an issue. And so it becomes very hard when issues are different all across the way to get a national focus on impacts and how to deal with those. Those have to sort of happen locally. But to deal with a problem, you have to create a national focus. And so whether it's climate intervention or mitigation or other things. So one of the things the Healthy Planet Action Coalition is trying to do is push to get the conferences of the parties to really address the practical issues that are happening, and to come up with a real credible plan of what's going to keep us from zooming past 2 degrees the way we're sort of zooming past 1.5 degrees. Right now, they haven't done that. We're trying to reach out to groups and trying to get messages into the upcoming conference that's going to be the next COP meeting in Brazil. And so one of the things to do is to indeed is convey urgency about this issue from your local leaders up to your state and national leaders, and say, there has to be a credible plan. And this issue of just doing emissions reduction is not working. Emissions are still going up. What else can be done? And those in low latitudes in countries like India that are very vulnerable need to be very outspoken about the vulnerability. It's kind of amazing they ever accepted 1.5 degrees as a viable limit. Going up above 2 is just much further than we really want to go.
Thank you, Mike. I think we're running over. I want to thank Mike and Soumitra and Raj and the district governor and all the folks in the Rotary clubs in that part of India. By the way, in my own book, A Climate Vocabulary of the Future, one of the terms I came up with was mango massacre, because of what I understand was the 2022 sort of the collapse of the mango harvest due to a variety of reasons. And I understand it's rebounded, or so I've read. I hope that's the case. And I assume if Mango City is the name that you're involved, or at least many of you directly or indirectly, in the cultivation of that wonderful fruit. But what I'd like to do now is turn it back to, well, first, I see, Leslie, you have your hands up very briefly. We only have a minute. We've taken your name, hopefully not in vain, several times today. If you could just say a couple words, and the floor is yours, and then we'll wrap up.
Cool. Thank you. Yeah, these are short comments, but when you talk about reaching young people, I have been teaching for over a decade at Stanford on climate change, how it came to be and what solutions might be. And that's a hugely impactful thing to do. And I know among this group, there are a number of teachers. So don't forget to, become an adjunct or teach, in some way. because it really helps. The students come in terribly stressed. You wouldn't sign up for my class if you weren't worried about climate already, and they leave with knowing some pathways of what they could do. So they begin to recognize their own agency, and I think that's a huge thing you can do. And then the other is, as you say, emissions are going up. In the US, there are only a couple of states that are allowed to adopt some really practical solar solutions. Balcony solar that's been perfected in the EU is not allowed in all but 2 states. So it's crazed. And so anyone who has a policy contact that they can start trying to help people do the right thing here, that could make a huge difference too. So those were my couple comments I was yearning to make. Thank you.
Thank you, Leslie. And I just want to reiterate to everybody that Leslie has been a pioneer in so many aspects of climate intervention in the US and now here in India and in the polls. And, if we had more people like Leslie, we wouldn't need to have these webinars because we would have solved much of the problem by now. So good to see you, Leslie. All right, let me turn it over to Soumitra, who will basically give you an opportunity to fill out one last question, which is, has your mind changed about cooling or SRM or whatever, all the different terms we use for it, to see whether today's hour and 10 minutes or so has had an impact on you. And I also just want to say that we will be following up with an email to all of you with lots of links and more information, and the intention for you to stay in touch with Soumitra and HCI so that today is the beginning of a partnership and not the end of one. So with that, the floor is yours, Soumitra.
So I launched the webinar again. So let us take 30 seconds, and right after that, floor will be to Avijit. He is the Rotarian from Malda, and Avijit will take that. But while Avijit takes we give 30 seconds for this poll and see if there is any change.
And it looks like there's a lot more people now than when the poll was taken. There are almost 3 times as many. So it may not be a change for some of you, but just what your views are on it right now.
On SRM.
Yeah, on SRM, because I think we only had 16, and I see there's 44 of us, not counting or including bots and chats and whatever. So it's a lot. This is one of the few webinars where the number of people has grown as we've gone longer, rather than people dropping off. With that, I think is a good sign.
So I see 23 people responded. It's not moving, so I end the poll and share the poll, okay? Okay, let me share the results. So Harp, to you.
All right, let's see. Strongly support, I think you have the earlier numbers, right, Soumitra? Strongly support is 60. I think it was 60 before, wasn't it?
Yeah, about the same, yeah.
Yeah, more people, but somewhat supportive 30. I think that's higher, but correct me if I'm wrong.
So, okay, somewhat supportive. Okay, I think.
So, what was it the first time?
Cannot remember right now,
Oh, okay. Well, we'll send the results when we send the email out, but it looks pretty promising that 90% of the folks are somewhat or strongly supportive. So the one thing I will say is that you are in the minority, because if you did a poll of the world, we would not find that result. And whether you came in with that or something that one of us said helped convince you or open your mind, either way, we hope that you will take your supportive approach and apply it in the work that you do in general. And in particular, we hope you will work with Soumitra and Raj and all the folks at HCI who they have the most simple goal in the world, or the most easy to understand, to cool India. And it's like a two-word goal, cool India. Nothing more and nothing less. One of the most ambitious targets and goals on the planet, but one that's absolutely essential for people's well-being. So I want to thank everybody who's been involved today, those of you who came, all the folks from all the Rotary clubs for your participation and your involvement. And again, I'll say it over and over again. I might be boring when I say it, but please stay involved. Um, get your friends and your neighbors and your colleagues involved. The single most important thing, all the research has shown about climate change, the single most important thing is to talk about it with other people. Because that if without those conversations, things don't happen and governments don't do what they need to do. So on behalf of everybody, thank you for coming out today, and we look forward to doing this again sometime soon. Thanks again.
Abhijit,
Thank you.
Thank
floor
you.
is yours.
Thank you.
So,
Thank you.
By the way, I'm sorry, was there someone who wanted to give a last, a sort of a local farewell?
yes, yes.
I'm
Abhijit,
sorry, sorry about that. I got carried away. So let me turn it over to you. What was it? Dr. Ashara, were you going to say a few words?
Dr. Abhijit Acharya.
Yeah,
Are you here?
I am I am audible.
Yes,
Hello, Soumitra.
you are audible.
Yes, yes. Myself, Abhijit Acharya, President of Rotary Club of Mango City, Malda, District 3240, Zone 4. I am greatly honored to have the opportunity of giving thanks to all of you. Firstly, I am thankful to our District Governor of Rotary District 3240, Rotarian Dr. Kameshwar Singh Arangbaum, for his presence as the inaugurator of this webinar in spite of his busy schedule and for his active participation. Then I am thankful and grateful also to Soumitra Das, Chairman and Executive Director of the Healthy Climate Initiative, for arranging such a meaningful webinar with HPAC and Rotary. I am also greatly thankful to Michael MacCracken, board member of the Healthy Planet Action Coalition, for his valuable information. Then I give my thanks to the moderator of this webinar, Simmens, co-founder of Healthy Climate Action Coalition, for his excellent moderation. I am greatly thankful to ACI webinar team for their continuous support. Then I am thankful to all the presidents and members of Rotary District 3240. My hearty thanks goes to Poshimbango Bigyan Mancho Malda, ACI Malda team, and all teachers, students, and all others participants. Finally, I am thankful to all the members of Rotary Club of Mango City Malda for their continuous support. Hope we all together will be able to fight against this environmental crisis. Thank you all once again.
Thank you, everyone, and hope to stay engaged with you all.